ready, watch the gate.
Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. It's been a little while since I've done a video here on YouTube, and I figured I would at least get going on some new components that I've just recently picked up for the BMX race bike that I've been racing for about the last 6 or 7 months now. Now, for those of you that are familiar with the channel, I got back into BMX racing, or at least riding initially, about 1.5 years ago. Went to the track a whole bunch, practiced a lot, and of course some local riders said, hey, why don't you come out and try doing some racing? Well, now I'm involved in not only state qualifier events, I've also qualified for the Gold Cup, which basically encompasses the entire Southwest. And of course, I've got my local regional racing that I do here in San Diego, a little bit through Chula Vista, which I just experienced a few weeks ago, and of course out at San Diego BMX right there in Kearney Mesa, which is formerly known as Kearney Moto Park for any of you old school guys that may be watching this. Now, I've recently noticed that I need a little bit of maintenance to be done on the bike, and I noticed there's a little bit of creaking coming out of the front of the head tube on the bike for some weird reason. When I don't have the front end under a load, when I turn the wheels, there's a little bit of a weird kind of creaking sound. Now, a simple solution would be to maybe tighten up the head bolt that's right there that kind of runs right through the integrated headset that's on the bike, which is probably just some simple maintenance that I need to do. But I figured maybe I should do some upgrades and kind of improve a little bit on the bike, help out with the performance. Hopefully it'll help me get a little bit faster, and that's right with what these components are right here in front of me. Now, keep in mind that these components aren't necessarily needed to be able to go faster. Nothing beats just solid training and working out and practicing. So don't think that you need to immediately go out and buy these things to be able to be successful on your own. But it does help to have some lightweight components and some upgraded products from just what the factory bike has. Now, the biggest change is going to be right here from Ikon BMX. This is their carbon fiber front fork, which now integrates the 1.1/8" steer tube for all the bikes that use an 1.1/8" headset. Now, or I should say 1.1/8" head tube. Now, initially Ikon only had this carbon fiber front fork designed to work with the 1.1/8" to an 1.5" steering tube and basically headset there in the front. So now they have it for where it works for just an 1.1/8" all the way through, which is great because my bike uses the 1.1/8" head tube and steer tube basically integrated into the factory setup right from Chase BMX. So this allows you to use this fork setup on the factory bike. So if it's something that you may have where you've got the 1.1/8" head tube all the way down, this is a great way to go. Now, I've actually already opened this up and checked it out, but I'm going to pull it out here and let you guys see it, and it should just come right out. This is a really good looking piece. Now this is, I want to say it's almost like a forged carbon fiber in the front here with the main forks. You can't really see the weave in the carbon, but this is a definitely lightweight unit. This thing I think weighs like 1 pound and maybe 3 or 4 ounces from what it says online. And that's for the one for the cruiser, which I run a cruiser bike. The class bike is probably even a little lighter because it's a little smaller, a little bit less material. Some unique features about the fork itself is that on the dropouts, you have a 20mm setup here for basically using a 20mm axle. Now, the downside to that is that my factory bike uses a 10mm axle or a 3/8 axle, and essentially you need to use some adapters to be able to make it work without having to update the front end as well beyond just the forks, which is what I've got here. Now, this is I picked up from BMX Racing Group, which is also who I got the forks through, and essentially they just thread together and they allow you to retain your factory axle in the front, so you don't have to go out and buy a complete new front end hub set and axle set potentially, and you can just kind of do things piece by piece. Another thing that's really unique is that with these forks, instead of using your head bolt, which would come down through your headset like a standard headset would use, it actually has this threaded unit right here that's going to go into the top of your head unit, or headset I should say. Squeaks a little as you don't do it. But essentially, instead of having a bolt go through, you've got this top cap and it's threaded all the way through internally. Now, for you old school guys, remember you usually have a bolt right here and a star nut inside your steer tube, whereas this utilizes this piece, so to speak. It's going to be interesting to get this put together and kind of see how it all works. So hopefully I can kind of figure out with my mechanical skills to be able to get it all set together. Now, the other thing I'm going to top this off with is going to be from Elevn Technologies, which is an all-new stem. Now, the stem that I have on the bike now is a 50mm stem that comes with the bike. It's from Chase. The Elevn unit, this is actually an aluminum unit, and it's a 50mm long unit, which is the same length of what's on the bike now. I didn't want to change too much of the geometry of what's there because I want to get used to the lighter weight front end, and if I change too much of the geometry, it may throw off a little bit of my riding with getting used to just having a lighter weight front end. Now, this is a really nice aluminum machined unit. I ended up choosing the red to kind of go with the rest of the theme of the bike. Just a really good looking piece altogether. I believe this is called I believe they call this a top load with the way that it's designed here, where the handlebars will be on the top. And of course, this is set up for the 22mm diameter handlebar that I use. They have them in a couple of different sizes and a couple of different millimeter lengths. So if you want to do some fine tuning with a different headset, sometimes this will help with your riding, especially if you're a tall guy like me. I'm 6'2", and sometimes my position on the bike could be a little awkward on certain machines. The one that I'm on a little bit used to, but for those of you that are a little bit taller and need something to extend the bars out a little bit, an aftermarket headset might just help you out, so it's worth looking into. Now I'm also going to be using Elevn Technologies integrated headset. Now what's nice is that this fork set already has the race kind of machined into the steer shaft or the steer tube of the forks, so you don't need to use a full headset on this. You can use the integrated headset where you have the top piece, and you already have this machine unit right here that just works right into the bottom of the headset on the bike. So you don't really need a bottom headset to be able to make this work. It does have 2 sealed bearings with it. It's a pretty nice unit. I've already opened it up, but I don't want to open it up again because I don't want parts to go all over the place. It's a really good looking unit. I chose to go with the machine red to kind of match with the new stem that I'm putting on here. It's a really nice looking piece. Now something else I picked up is of course the inside headset spacers. Now these are a really good tool to have because in case you have a weird position with where your stem sits right here on the shaft, once you get everything installed, sometimes you need to move your stem up a little bit so that everything sits perfectly. That way when you tighten this down, you have everything collapsed together and it holds everything in place real nicely. So it's a good thing to pick up when you're looking at doing an upgrade like this, just to kind of have. Sometimes it's good to just have them in your pit box anyway in case you need to make some adjustments at the track. It's a pretty good thing to have, and it's relatively inexpensive, so it's glad that I was able to pick it up. I got everything from BMX Racing Group online, or I think it's called BRG Group online, or .com, something like that. I'll have links at the bottom of this video so you guys can kind of check everything out for what I've got with all the different components here and the upgrades that I'm doing. Now what I'm not going to do in this video is show you guys how I install everything. It's going to take me a little bit of time to get this all installed, get it set up, and get it right. So what I'm going to do is go get the bike up on the stand, get everything off of it that's on there from the factory setup, get all this installed. Normally this kind of installation may take you, most people, 35 to maybe 45 minutes with some simple hand tools. I'm going to take a little bit of time and make sure I get this right, so it may take a little longer. I don't want to drag the video out too long for you guys. So I'm going to go get things going on the bike, get this all set up, and when we come back, I should have all of this installed, ready to go, and then we're going to go out to the track and we're going to get some practice laps in with the new fork set up on here and give you guys a little bit of feedback of what it's like to have a lighter weight fork and a little bit more performance, hopefully, with the new setup on here. So let's go get this set up, and I'll be right back. Okay guys, welcome back here. I've got everything assembled. It took me about 35, maybe 40 minutes to get it all figured out. And I figured I'd show you guys things up close instead of having the camera on myself. And hopefully with the light you can see everything okay. So right down here at the bottom of the fork, you've got the 20mm dropouts, which you can kind of see where I've got the adapters in here that allow me to still use the standard 10mm axle that the bike is equipped with my standard hub and just all the factory stuff that came on the bike. Now this is a really nice thing to be able to do because this way you can actually use your factory setup and not have to worry about trying to update the wheel set at the same time as doing this, and gives you a little bit of an expense savings because you're not having to do everything all at once. You can kind of do things in stages. So if you just move up the fork here, this is a really good looking fork. I went with the black and gray motif just to kind of keep things a little bit more stealth. Looks like I need to maybe clean it off a little bit here, and then just come right up here to where the bottom of the head tube is, and then to kind of where the steer tube works through the head tube on the factory frame. So at the bottom here, there was actually a small crown race for the factory bearing that was in the bottom. It was almost like a thrust bearing in a way, the way that it was designed. And it took a few minutes to get that to pop out because now I have 2 sealed bearings in the top and the bottom, which is just a nice upgrade to have, and it was part of what came from Elevn Technologies with the new headset that's in here. So once that popped out, this all pretty much went together relatively easy. You can just move the camera up here and you can kind of see the new stem that's on here as well. And just that red anodizing just looks really good together with the components. The unique thing about putting all this together, as I mentioned earlier in the video, is you have this top cap that's right here that actually threads down into your steer tube, so to speak. Now, some guys are used to using an Allen bolt and having the star nut that's down inside the steer tube. Well, in this case, this entire unit right here is threaded, and it threads down into your steer tube, and it kind of brings everything together when you're assembling it. So it was a kind of a newer thing that Ikon seems to offer with this specific setup. To me, it was easy to put together. It didn't really take too much of really finagling it and trying to find the threading and the star nut that's usually down inside your head tube. So if you're looking to do this on your own, it takes a few minutes to kind of figure it out. I did have to use a couple of headset spacers that are just kind of right here to get it right. And I may have to go back and readjust these a little bit because it feels like the bars just aren't quite in the right position. So that's all there really is to it. It didn't take too much to really get this all put together and get it right where I needed it. And hopefully you guys get a nice clear view of everything up close and the way it all came out. So just a good looking piece, good looking unit all together. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go make sure that all this is bolted up properly and just make sure I get a wrench on everything before we get out to the track, which is always something I recommend anyway when you're doing any sort of maintenance on your bike or when you're putting new stuff together. Just make sure you get a quick turn on all the Allen headed bolts that are on here, just to make sure nothing's loose before you go out and test ride it. So I'm gonna get that going, and then we're gonna go out to San Diego BMX. We're gonna get some laps in. That's my local track here in San Diego. Gonna kind of take a look and see how this all performs and have some final thoughts for you. So hopefully guys, you're enjoying what you're seeing here, and let me give you a quick view just kind of coming right down on through here. That's just a good looking fork. It really is. These come in a few different colors too, so if you don't like this black and gray, Ikon does offer, I think there's white, red, blue, there's the teal color that kind of goes with some of the chase frames and whatnot. So just a really good looking carbon fork on here. So all right, I'm gonna go get this all tightened up, and then we're gonna go out to the track. We're gonna get some laps in. Let's go see how this performs. All right, guys, so here we are at San Diego BMX Racing. We're going to go out and take a few laps on the new setup on the front end with the new carbon fork and, of course, the new headset and stem setup. See how this rides, and I'll get back to you guys probably in the shop because I'm probably going to have to make a few adjustments, and I'll wrap everything up for you guys to take a look at and really see what it's like to have a new setup on the bike. So let's go take a few laps out here at San Diego BMX Racing. Oh, that was a good gate. All right, guys, so here we are back at home. Hope you guys like seeing the laps out there at San Diego BMX Racing. I'm really lucky to have that place in my backyard, so to speak, for just practicing and working out and training, and of course, Friday night racing out there. And they've got some pretty big events coming up as well. The state finals will be out there this year for Southern California, so I'm really looking forward to that. I'm just going to give you guys a final close-up on everything here. This ended up being a relatively easy job as far as getting everything put together. As I mentioned earlier in the video, it's about a 35, maybe 40-minute job, depending on how quick you are at getting things kind of figured out. One thing I do want to point out, if you noticed earlier in the video, I'll show you right here, right where the fork comes into the head tube, I had a little bit more of a gap right here between the two items, and I wasn't too sure what was going on. And I really got to thank Pete there at BMX Racing Group for answering my email on a Sunday. He got back to me about this setup. Technically, you don't necessarily need a bearing in the bottom of this because it does have kind of a chamfered base right here, which you can't see because it's now inside the head tube. And I was having an issue with this not setting up right, and I had a little bit of a gap here, and I figured out that I didn't have the bottom bearing recessed deep enough into the head tube to allow the fork to come up higher to, you know, fit a little bit nicer and fit right. So it's a lot tighter of a fitment now from what I had. So earlier in the video, if you saw that there's a little bit of a gap here, I've since tightened this up. And as we come up here to the top, you can kind of see I've made a little bit of change as well, just with the spacer that I have on here. This can always vary a little bit with where you put your spacers and where you put your stems. So you may have to play with this a little bit when you do this kind of modification yourself, or this kind of an upgrade. This is just where it fits for me as far as my arm length and how I feel on the bike. It actually felt a little bit nicer because this seems a little lower, even though this stem puts the bar a little bit higher. It's almost like how I had the factory setup. It might be even a little taller, but not by much, because this is still a 50mm length right here, which is the factory length on the bike. So I didn't make a real big change in the length this way, but the height changed a little bit. So it made the bike feel a little bit more stable for me. All in all, the forks right here being a little bit less weight, and, you know, showing you guys kind of what's here one more time, because I just really like these forks and how they came out. It does make the bike handle a little differently, but it wasn't so crazy to where I was struggling to get used to less weight on the front end. So it was a pretty easy transition to go out, do some laps, and was able to get myself up to speed pretty quickly. In fact, the bike is a little on the dirty side, because after I went riding on Sunday and went to test everything, I actually went racing the very next night at Cactus Park, which is also here in San Diego, a little bit of a smaller, tighter facility, a little bit more technical, and actually went out there and won that club race. So pretty stoked on that. So I gotta go and clean the bike up, get things kind of buttoned up here, maybe get a wrench on some stuff just to make sure things are good to go. One more tip that I do have for this is that when you're doing this, it's good to put a little grease inside the head tube here when you're putting your bearings in. I actually use something that I use with RC racing, which is from Sticky Kicks RC, which is just their red grease that they have here, and I used a little bit of it here just inside the head tube. And what's nice about this is that it's in a syringe. I usually use this with all my RC car stuff, and it just works really well for application because you don't have a big bottle of it that you're having to deal with, or you're buying so much of it and barely using any of it. So Ray, if you're watching, I finally figured out a way to integrate RC car racing with BMX racing a little bit. Ray from Sticky Kicks RC is a big mountain bike guy. He follows a lot of my stuff, so quick shout out to Ray. Good talking with you as always. So for now, I think that's about it for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you guys have any questions, of course, you can always put some comments down there at the bottom. I'll try and answer them as quick as I can. For now, this is Brad with Lucky 7 Racing, and I hope to see you guys out at the racetrack.